What's happening, fam? L.A.R. movement still moving. Book is entitled Lessons from a Non-Custodial Father at Amazon Kindle and Create Space. Link could be in the description box below as usual. Go get it. PayPal link there also. They asked me to put it up, so I'll put it up. Thank you everybody for supporting. But this video is entitled Will Global Economics Affect Racism? Because of everything that's going on politically, and I was watching, my aunt told me that Aquaman made over $1 billion globally. Not so much in the US, but globally. And I'm like, okay, Black Panther last year, Aquaman this year. And I remember for years prior they were talking about wanting more diversity in media, right? Because people wanted to see something that represented themselves. And what keeps happening is all of these years of there's a lot of successful movies with white people, but there are a lot of bombs, and people aren't supporting them. They're tired of seeing negative imagery of themselves and positive imagery of white people, but at the same time, globally, they're not trying to. It's like, no, we're not paying for that. And then I think about China and how on one end they looked at as this global power because of economics, and on the other end they're looked at as this soon to be enemy because of their economic power. And the irony of it is, like when they put up the commercial of the black guy in China, they put him in the washing machine and he came out Chinese, right? That was disrespectful. But it was also like, okay, if we in power, we're going to be just as racist to you as the white people, right? That's how it was taken. But at the same time, if you're in America, they're trying to put all these taxes and tariffs on China because they don't want China making any more money, because China owns this country's debt, for one, and all of this outsourcing in some degrees economically has come back to backfire the country, right? So now you want to make China the enemy. And I think it affects racism because I think in going over to Africa, the Chinese are going to help out Africa. It was a good thing at first, and then you saw the racism, pop up, right? Now, if they can't get Africa, if Africa starts to put a halt on that, that slows down their global financial power, because they're doing what Europe and the Middle East does is rape Africa for their resources and sell them to the highest bidder. So can they maintain their economic power if Africa's not in play? Because the U.S. is trying to put tariffs and stuff and slow their economy down. Now, how does this affect racism? Because now it's looked at as like, okay, let me get this right. These people, if they're in the power position, now people look at them different, look at Chinese people different, like, oh man, we gotta respect them. And the same people that say we gotta respect them are part of the same people that's like, we're gonna stab them in the back. And it seems like from the same group, it's like, you know what, they gotta respect us, but we're gonna stab them in the back. So it creates this weird dichotomy. Same thing I think about with being black and black American versus being non-black American. How does the global economy affect racism? Because what winds up happening is you get non-black Americans who give black people a bad name because they emulate what they feel is black culture globally, right? And it affects racism while using black America's resources to become more than they were in their own country. So But we have this weird dichotomy. We're respected more outside of America than we are in America, though. But there's still racism. And then I saw this clip. I think I put it up on Facebook a while back, where these young African boys, their family moved to Australia, and I think this is their first dealing with racism, realizing all of the nuances of how you have to carry yourself in a non-black society, and how you're always viewed as a threat. And it's all economics, because getting back to the movie, this all ties in together. Just stick with me. Because the Oscars come into play, and for years they've been the Oscars so white. This whole Kevin Hart situation with the gay community. Now there's no host. Now it's up in arms, but they've been losing ratings for years. And the reason I bring entertainment in, like I brought in the beginning, in the forefront of this video, is because entertainment has been the primary pusher of the propaganda. So when the world is tired of the propaganda machine's message that has been putting out over years and years, and it's not supporting it, and it's like, well, if you don't have, like, Aquaman was full of white people, but the lead was a Samoan, right? So if you don't have some kind of quote unquote diversity, you might not make money. And this affects the bottom line, because now it's starting to make other groups the forefront of the face of a hero, or the face of who should be respected. And at the same time, financially, it's changing the dynamics of the face of who should be respected financially. So the only other thing is what? The military. Which means if you don't have people's hearts and minds, and you impose the military on people, you're just going to be looked at as a bully. So because of the global economics. Now, how does this affect racism? Because now it changed the dynamic in the sense of we have to listen to these people because they have money and they have guns to... I'm not listening to these people just because they got guns, because they don't have money no more. Problem. And other races deal with this, because Hispanics are going through it right now with the wall thing. You know, because everybody comes to America for opportunity, but now this, I'm going to use you when the getting was good, but now I'm throwing you back. How does that affect racism? Because there was a point where in Mexico they were saying that, you know, white people really wasn't allowed. And a lot of people don't know, Americans in general, and specifically white Americans, aren't really liked globally. They're seen as troublemakers, and this is not just in non-white countries. This is also in Europe. You know, they just don't get respected like that. Considered arrogant, extra, over the top, aggressive, just a nuisance. You know, when you're looking at the worst sense. So, how does global economics affect racism? Because on one end, you got people who want to do the status quo as far as racism when it comes to the caste system of race, and on the other end, you know, you got people realizing they're toppling racism because, you know, racism is broke. You know, American capitalism is broke, so it's kind of breaking racism. Because the only way to fund it is like the blaxploitation era. They need other races to actually put enough money in the pockets of these predominantly white-owned corporations and businesses to actually be able to buy back their position to be at the forefront of economy and to set the precedents for the caste system. But because of this global economy, it seems like, you know, pretty much everybody is in a position to fall, because you got to remember, Europe is breaking up, the EU is breaking up, Brexit, all that. But at the same time, a lot of those countries were broke. Africa has always been poor because everybody else has been stealing from it. So to make people pay for, if in the African Union was killed by President Obama going after Gaddafi, but I got a gut feeling it's gonna wind up reinstituting itself, and those nations are gonna wind up figuring it out, and that's gonna cause a problem, and then the Europe, China, and America is gonna have to pay for stuff. So that means China won't be able to sustain its economic power. The U.S. is going to be in a pickle. Europe probably going to get no love because they've been the closest thing raping Africa for years. So how does that? So when the global markets change, you're going to see all racism change, because now people don't want to bite the hand that feeds them, but the hand that feeds them is the hand that they hate. And if you can't, so should we go to war and steal it? But here's the problem. I mean, it's the same thing with black on black crime. When you're poor in your area, you lash out at the people closest to you. So, I mean, the EU is kind of indicative of like Europe's old history, where if the money's low, they're gonna go to war with each other. So that might happen, in all of these instances where groups of people are rich in the world stage and they've been racist, they've been hiding around being rich and powerful, that also changes. Because if you're not as rich, you're not as powerful. See, if you got guns but you can't afford the bullets, then you pretty much got nothing. You got tanks, but you can't afford the gas. You got nothing. And all of the bad treatment for numerous oppressed groups worldwide, and the propaganda is changing because, the people who are viewed as heroes people are not supporting the idea that they're heroes anymore. People don't want the propaganda that a hero only looks one way. And also people are starting to come into the grips with the reality that, using the Hispanics as a reference, other groups saw that, okay, they were supposed to be accepted technically as white, so you turned on them when you figured you couldn't afford to deal with them no more. So I'm sure Asians are like, oh, y'all gonna do the same thing to us. But Asians, it seems like business-wise, have been like that the whole time. Like, we already know y'all gonna turn, but at the same time, it doesn't look like that either, because it's a lot of this blending in the same way some of Hispanics was doing. Like, we're together, and figuring out the hard way, maybe you're not together. And this also goes to play with blacks who are abroad, where you're getting this, I'm on y'all side, but I'm on y'all side, and at some point you're gonna have to pick a side, because the global economics are gonna affects the racism. Because when some blacks from certain areas go other places abroad, they're immediately the villain of the story. If they came with money, would it be that way? I think it'll be totally different. But this is just a curious question, the way I see things. I hope y'all kept up. I hope I wasn't all over the place to the point where you couldn't. So, peace.